From the deepest shadows, where secrets are kept and stories are buried, a new tale is about to emerge. We often walk through life thinking we know the people around us, that we understand the world we live in. But what if everything you thought was true is just a carefully constructed facade? What if beneath the surface of everyday life, there are scars left by events we dare not speak of, and shadows that follow our every move? Get ready to question everything. We about to pull back the curtain and expose the hidden truths that lie just beyond our sight. In the world of scars and shadows, what is lurking in your blind spot? Subscribe now and let's find out together. You won't want to miss what's coming next.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Scars and Shadows, the podcast where horror isn't just entertainment. It's history, mythology, and the stories that continue to haunt us long after the credits roll. I'm your host, and if you've been following the show, you know we love talking about everything from slasher icons and haunted locations to the paranormal, investigations, and the history behind our favorite horror films. Today, we're doing something a little different. We are officially halfway through 2026, and honestly, what a year it's been for horror fans. For the last several years, horror has been experiencing what many people call a renaissance. Studios are taking chances again. Independent filmmakers are producing incredible psychological horror. Practical effects are making a comeback. Even major franchises are returning without simply relying on nostalgia. We've had zombies, witches, psychological terror, supernatural nightmares, and some of the best atmosphere we've seen in years. Today, I'm going to count down my favorite horror films that I've seen so far this year, giving my thoughts on each one, and then later, we're going to dive deep into one of my favorite franchises of all time. Because this week is a new one getting ready to come out on Friday. That is the Evil Dead series. We have Evil Dead Burn coming out on Friday. I am so looking forward to this movie. From what I've seen of the trailers, the teaser trailer really gave me goosebumps, to be honest with you, and got me just totally sucked in. I was all in right after seeing that teaser trailer. But so we're going to take a deep dive into the Evil Dead series. We'll be talking about every movie in the series, the TV show, the mysterious books of the dead, and discussing some fascinating fan theories about the Necronomicon and what we might see in the upcoming Evil Dead Burn. Now remember, these are some of my opinions. Horror is subjective. What scares one person may not scare another. And that's one of the reasons this genre is so great. So grab some popcorn, turn down the lights, and let's step once again into the shadows. So we're going to start off with one of the first movies that came out this year. It was really great in my opinion, which was 28 Years, The Bone Temple. If you followed the 28 Days Later franchise from the beginning, you know it helped redefine zombie, or rather more in line of infected movies for an entire generation. Technically, these aren't zombies at all. They're living humans infected with the rage virus, making them terrifying because they're fast, relentless, and still biologically alive. The Bone Temple continues that tradition while expanding the world in ways that honestly I really enjoyed. The movie wastes no time throwing viewers back into the chaos. The atmosphere is bleak, it's hopeless, and the tension is there from the beginning to the end. One thing that I appreciate is that it simply doesn't repeat what we've already seen. Instead, it asks what happens decades after society collapses. How have people adapted? How have the infected changed? Can humanity ever truly recover? These questions help elevate the movie just beyond another survival story. Visually, the film is stunning. Abandoned cities reclaimed by nature, eerie silence before sudden violence, and environments that make you constantly feel unsafe. The infected remain some of the most frightening creatures in horror because they don't slowly shuffle towards you, they sprint. Their rage feels animalistic, unpredictable, and unstoppable. Another strength is the emotional weight carried by the characters. Survival isn't just about avoiding the infected, it's about deciding what kind of person you're willing to become when civilization no longer exists. So, with that said, no spoilers here, but there are moments that genuinely surprise me. The Bone Temple itself becomes almost mythical, a place surrounded by mystery, fear, and symbolism. Overall, excellent performances by the actors and actresses that are cast in that movie. Great pacing, fantastic atmosphere, beautiful cinematography, and so far one of the favorite horror films of the year for me. For me, I give it a 9.5 out of 10. So let's go into the next movie. The next movie I just seen recently, and I'd say a couple weeks ago. It was very good. This movie is Hokum. Sometimes the best horror films aren't the loudest. Sometimes they're the quiet ones, the ones that slowly crawl under your skin. That's exactly how I felt about Hokum. Rather than throwing jump scares at the audience every 5 minutes, this movie builds tension through folklore, superstition, and isolation. The setting alone creates dread. Rural landscapes, old traditions, whispers about ancient magic. It all combines into something that feels timeless. The movie asks one interesting question. How much power do old stories really have? Are legends simply myths or warnings? The performances help sell every moment. Characters in this movie react like believable people rather than horror movie stereotypes. Another thing I loved was the cinematography. Dark forests, fog-covered fields, old buildings that feel like they've witnessed centuries of tragedy. It reminded me that atmosphere can sometimes be more frightening than the monsters themselves. Now, without giving away major spoilers, the final act pays off the slow build-up in a satisfying way while still leaving you with questions after the credits roll. Not every horror movie needs gallons of blood. Sometimes fear comes from what you don't fully understand. My rating, 9 out of 10. Now, we're going to get into another movie. We're just going to switch gears completely on this. This movie was Obsession. Obsession is a psychological horror at its finest. The premise seems simple at first. A lonely man desperately wants the affection of a woman he believes is perfect. Then he encounters a mysterious supernatural object capable of granting his deepest desire. Sounds romantic, doesn't it? Until it isn't. As the story unfolds, his wish becomes twisting reality within itself. What starts as love quickly transforms into control, then obsession, then terror. One thing that I appreciated about this movie is how it explores human nature. How far would someone go to get everything that they've ever wanted? And if you could force someone to love you, would it actually be love? The movie constantly blurs the line between reality and nightmare. You begin questioning whether what you're seeing is actually happening or simply the unraveling mind of the main character. The cinematography reinforces that confusion through lighting, camera angles, and dreamlike imagery. The ending is exactly what psychological horror should deliver. It doesn't spoon-feed answers. Instead, it leaves you thinking long after the movie ends. That's the kind of horror that I enjoy. The kind that follows you for home. For me, 8.5 out of 10. So, if I had to rank my favorites so far, number 3, I would say Obsession. Number 2, I would say Hokum. And my favorite horror movie so far that I've seen in 2026 is definitely 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. But you know what, people? We are only halfway through the year. we've still got some major releases coming out, and one of the biggest is next on today's discussion. Evil Dead Burn. Now, before we talk about where this franchise is going, let's look back at how it all began in a lonely cabin in the woods over 40 years ago. So we're going to go right on ahead here. We're going to go into the complete history of the Evil Dead franchise. Now that we've looked at some of the best horror films of 2026 so far, it's time to shift gears and talk about one of the greatest horror franchises ever created. Evil Dead. When most people think of horror icons, names like Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger, Leatherface, and Ghostface come to mind. But one hero stands apart from them all. Not because he's the killer, but because he's the one crazy enough to fight the evil head on. That hero is Ash Williams, played by Bruce Campbell, the one and only. With one hand replaced by a chainsaw and a shotgun he probably calls his boomstick, Ash becomes one of horror's most beloved characters. But believe it or not, that's not how his story started. So let's go all the way back to 1981, shall we? Before Sam Raimi was directing blockbuster superhero movies, he was a young filmmaker with a small budget and a big imagination. Alongside his lifelong friend, Bruce Campbell, he created what would become one of the most influential independent horror films ever made. The storyline is simple. 5 friends travel to a remote cabin in the Tennessee woods for a relaxing weekend. The group discovers a strange book bound in human flesh and written in ancient symbols. The Necronomicon Ex Mortis, often called the Book of the Dead. Now, I do want to tell you, in lore, real quick, before we go into all of the Evil Dead lore, that the Necronomicon was actually something that was created in some of his works, and that was an author, H.P. Lovecraft. So just so you know, that's where the Necronomicon actually originates from, and obviously it was the central focal point for the Evil Dead. So without further ado, we will go right back into it here. I just thought I'd give you guys a little bit on that. So nearby is an old tape recorder left behind by an archaeologist named Professor Noby. Curious, they play the recording. On the tape, Noby reads passages from an ancient book. That single decision unleashes an ancient evil sleeping in the woods. One by one, the friends become possessed by demonic spirits known as Deadites. What makes the Deadites so terrifying isn't just their appearance. They torment their victims psychologically. They mimic voices, taunt survivors, and use loved ones as weapons. They enjoy causing fear before they kill. Ash begins the film as an ordinary college student with no special skills. He's scared, overwhelmed, and simply trying to survive. But by the end of the movie, he's watched every one of his friends die or become possessed. He's covered in blood, physically exhausted, mentally broken, and completely alone. The ending is unforgettable. Just when Ash thinks he's survived, the unseen evil rushes towards him through the woods, crashing through the cabin and into him. And then all of a sudden, the screen goes black. Audience were left wondering if Ash survived at all. Now, this is where things get interesting. Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn. People often ask, is Evil Dead 2 a remake or a sequel? The answer is a little bit of both. Because of rights and issues involved footage from the first film, Sam Raimi chose to retell the beginning of the story before continuing into new territory. Ash returns to the cabin, and once again the evil is awakened. This time, however, the movie embraces dark comedy without losing the horror. One of the most famous scenes in horror history is when Ash's own hand becomes possessed. It punches him, tries to kill him. It even flips him off. Eventually, Ash is forced to cut off his own hand with a chainsaw. Rather than giving up, he straps that chainsaw directly onto the stump where his hand used to be. It's one of the greatest horror hero moments ever filmed. Another unforgettable scene is the laughing room scene. The furniture laughs, the mounted deer laughs, the lamps laugh. Even Ash starts laughing. It's funny, but it's also unsettling because we're watching a man slowly lose his grip on reality. By the end of the film, Ash is pulled through a time portal and thrown hundreds of years into the past. So that's where the next chapter begins. Army of Darkness. If someone had told audiences after the first Evil Dead movie that the next sequel would feature skeleton armies, medieval castles, and time travel, they probably wouldn't have believed it. But yet, that's exactly what happened. Ash finds himself in the Middle Ages. The people believe he's a hero destined to save them from evil. To return home, Ash must retrieve the Necronomicon. But there's just one problem. There are 3 books. He's warned to speak the words Klaatu, Barada, Nikto. Of course, Ash forgets part of the phrase. That mistake unleashes an army of the dead and creates his evil twin, Evil Ash. The movie leans heavily into fantasy, adventure, and comedy while delivering memorable horror moments. It's also where we get some of Ash's most famous lines. Good, bad, I'm the guy with the gun. And of course, hail to the king, baby. While Army of Darkness isn't as scary as earlier films, it became a cult classic because it embraced its own absurdity. Now we move into Evil Dead 2013. More than 20 years later, the franchise returned with a completely different tone. No Ash, no comedy, no one-liners, just relentless terror. The story follows Mia, who travels with friends to an isolated cabin while trying to overcome drug addiction. Inside the cabin, they discover another Book of the Dead. Against all common sense, someone reads from it. The result is absolute chaos. The possessed Mia becomes one of the most disturbing deadites in the franchise. Unlike earlier films, this movie focuses heavily on body horror, broken bones, self-mutilation, nail guns, glass, fire, chainsaws. The practical effects are incredible. The finale, set during a rainstorm of blood, is one of the most visually unforgettable endings in modern horror. Many fans consider this as one of the greatest horror remakes ever made. Then we move into, a couple years ago, we got into Evil Dead Rise. Instead of a remote cabin, the horror moves into a rundown apartment building. That simple change proves something important. The evil doesn't belong to the woods. It belongs wherever the book is opened. The story centers on the 2 sisters, whose family is torn apart after one of the ancient books of the dead is discovered inside a hidden bank vault beneath the building. Once the ancient recordings are played, the Deadites return. This time, the emotional core is family. Watching a mother become possessed while terrorizing her own children creates a kind of horror different than the previous films. The hallway scenes, the elevator filled with blood, the cheese grater, the final creature formed from multiple possessed bodies. Those moments instantly became franchise classics. Perhaps the biggest revelation isn't even the violence, it's the discovery that there isn't just one Book of the Dead, people. There are multiple ancient volumes. That single revelation opens the door to countless new stories. Now we're going to get into a little bit of Ash vs. Evil Dead, the TV series. was out for 3 seasons. For years, fans wondered if Bruce Campbell would ever play Ash again. Finally, he returned to the television series Ash vs. Evil Dead. Now older and still working as a dead-end job, Ash accidentally unleashes evil once again after reading from the Necronomicon. Some things never change, especially with Ash. The series perfectly balances horror, comedy, action, and also outrageous gore. We meet new heroes, including Pablo and Kelly, who become fan favorites in their own right. The show also expands the mythology. We learn about the Kandarian demon. We see entire communities threatened by deadite outbreaks. We even meet Ash's daughter, Brandy, who continues the Williams family legacy. Although the series ended after 3 seasons, it left fans with one unforgettable image. Ash awakens in a post-apocalyptic future. The battle against evil isn't over. It was just the beginning. So, after more than 40 years, the Evil Dead franchise has evolved from one low-budget cabin-in-the-woods horror movie into an entire universe filled with ancient demons, cursed books, unforgettable heroes, and some of the bloodiest practical effects ever put on film. But perhaps the biggest mystery isn't Ash or the Deadites. It's the books, or the book itself, or should I say the books. Because the deeper you look into the Evil Dead lore, the more questions begin to appear. How many Necronomicons are there? Who created them? Do they all possess the same powers? Or does each book unleash a different kind of evil? That's exactly what we're diving into next. So with that said, we know of at least 3 different books in the series so far. We have talked about the history of the Evil Dead franchise so far, from the lonely cabin in the woods to the apartment building and even a post-apocalyptic future. Now we're going to discuss what may be the real star of the franchise. And it's not Ash, not the Deadites, not even a Kandarian demon. We're talking about the Necronomicon, the Book of the Dead. If you've watched every movie and the television series, you've probably noticed something. The books aren't always the same. Their covers look different. Their faces are different. Their pages are different. Even the events they unleash seem different. So, what exactly is the Necronomicon? Let's open the book figuratively, of course. So the Necronomicon is an ancient book filled with forbidden knowledge, rituals, and incantations, capable of opening a doorway between our world and a realm of demonic evil. Throughout the franchise, people make the same mistake. They find the book. They become curious. They even read the words out loud. And once those words are spoken, there is no taking them back. The evil is awakened. The demons don't simply kill their victims, they possess them. They twist both body and mind into something cruel and sadistic. Those possessed victims become Deadites, whose goal is to spread terror, torment the living, and help evil consume more souls. The films teach us one lesson over and over. Some knowledge is forbidden for a reason. One of the biggest revelations in Evil Dead Rise is that there are multiple books of the dead. The film suggests that 3 volumes were discovered long ago beneath a church, with one of them ending up in the apartment building where the story unfolds. That means the events we've seen across the franchise may not all involve the same exact book. There's a huge piece of mythology because it means different stories can happen in different places while still fitting into the same universe. What happened to the other books? Who has them? Were they destroyed? Hidden? Or are they still waiting for someone foolish enough to read from them? What can the books do? Across the films and television series, the Books of the Dead have displayed terrifying abilities. They can summon the Kandarian demon. They can possess the living. They can reanimate the dead. They can influence dreams and visions. They can open up portals between worlds. They can corrupt entire locations. They can tempt curious people into reading them. And once it's awakened, the evil rarely stops on its own. So one thing I found interesting at the books almost seem alive. They don't simply just sit on a shelf. Some versions appear to bleed. Some almost look like they're watching you. It's almost as though as the books want to be opened. So we're going to go back into who, another question about these is who created the books? The film never fully explains who originally created every Book of the Dead or exactly how they came into existence. We know they're ancient. We know they're dangerous. We know scholars, priests, archaeologists, and explorers have encountered them throughout history. But there's still so much mystery surrounding their true origin. And honestly, I hope some of that mystery never goes away. Now, I will add to that in Ash vs. Evil Dead, they do talk about the Dark Ones were the ones that actually wrote the books, the Necronomicon book. But they only talk about one specific book. They didn't talk about multiple books. So there still is that mystery about how these the origins of the other books came and how many there truly are. So, with that said, I hope some of that mystery doesn't go away, though, because there's still some of that mystery there, like I just said. Sometimes the unknown is far scarier than having every answer. The evil force released by the books is often referred to by fans as the Kandarian demon or Kandarian evil. What's terrifying that it usually has no permanent body. Instead, it moves like an invisible storm. It races through forests. It crashes through buildings. It slams doors. It whispers. It screams. Then, it finds somebody to possess. That makes it incredibly difficult to fight. You can't simply shoot it. You can't outrun it forever. Once it's been unleashed, survival becomes almost impossible. So now we're going to get into a little bit more fan theory here. So remember, everything from this point forward is speculation, not confirmed canon. Here's my personal theory. What if the 3 known Books of the Dead aren't the only ones? What if they're simply the 3 volumes we've seen so far? Imagine an ancient civilization realizing that one book contained unimaginable evil. Instead of keeping all that knowledge together, they divided it into many books and scattered them across the world, hoping no one would ever reunite them. One book could focus on possession, another on resurrection, another on opening portals, another on summoning specific demons, such as the Kandarian demon, another on raising entire armies of the dead. In which, I will admit, in that movie though, in Army of Darkness, there was already 3 books shown. 2 of them did different things, were not the right book, he's trying to find the right one, but what if they were also part of it too? Maybe those were all smaller, separate volumes as well, so it's something to think about. But if that's true, every time someone discovers a new volume, they awaken a different kind of nightmare. It would explain why every Evil Dead story feels familiar, yet unique. Again, this is just a theory, not something confirmed by any of the filmmakers. So, with that said, we're going to go into a little bit about Evil Dead Burn. Right now, the filmmakers have kept most of the story details under wraps. We know it's intended to be a new chapter in a franchise, but exactly how it connects to the previous films, hasn't been revealed publicly. They did show what looks like a notebook, but doesn't look like your true book. But that means fans have been doing what horror fans always do, speculating. Could another book of the dead appear? Could we see a new kind of deadite? Could the story explore another part of the world's ancient history? Well, maybe. Or maybe the film will surprise us with something none of us have predicted. That's part of the fun of this franchise, people. I do also want to say, before I do my closing thoughts here, there is one interesting thing that I noticed in the trailers that would connect some of the movies. And let me see, I think I have the picture right here. So if you see, who is that? This is Evil Dead Burn. It's part of the trailer right here. And I don't know if you can actually really see who that is, but let me see if I can zoom it in a little bit for you. But it looks awfully familiar, doesn't it? Because it just showed a picture just a little while ago, if you guys were really paying attention here, with Evil Dead Rise. Let me see if I can pull up that picture. And there it is. And that was Jessica from the first one, from Evil Dead Rise. And in this picture here in the trailer, it sure looks like that's her again in the water. So it makes me wonder if maybe the events of Burn is actually taking place around the same time as what Evil Dead Rise was. And also, a birdie informed me that the house, the main house of Evil Dead Burn, and I didn't know this just till very, very recently, is actually the same house that was used in the TV series Ash vs. Evil Dead. So is there some correlation there? Are they going to link up everything? As well as the Necronomicon doesn't look like the regular Book of the Dead and Evil Dead Burn. From the glimpses that I saw, it looks like it's almost like a scrapbook. And it might have multiple pages, possibly not just from one book, from maybe other books combined. So that's a little bit more my theory, but speculation. But that is what I have seen. So keep that all in mind. But that movie is coming out Friday. So my closing thoughts here is more than 40 years ago, after Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell introduced us to a haunted cabin in the woods, Evil Dead is still evolving, people. The franchise has survived because it isn't afraid to change. Every generation gets its own terrifying chapter. Whether your favorite is the original, Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, 2013 film, Evil Dead Rise, or Ash vs. Evil Dead TV series, there's something here for every horror fan. And now we wait to see what Evil Dead Burn brings to the table. Will it answer questions? Will it create even bigger mysteries? Only time will tell. Now I want to hear from all of you. Which Evil Dead movie is your favorite? Who's your favorite Deadite? And here's the big question. Do you think there are only the 3 known books of the dead? Or do you believe that there are more hidden somewhere in the Evil Dead universe? Let us know in the comments down below. If you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share Scars and Shadows with your fellow horror fans. Until next time, remember, some doors are locked for a reason. Some books should never be opened. And if you ever find one bound in human flesh, do yourself a favor, people. Don't read it. We'll see you next time in the shadows. From the deepest shadows, where secrets are kept and stories are buried,
a new tale is about to emerge. We often walk through life thinking we know the people around us, that we understand the world we live in. But what if everything you thought was true is just a carefully constructed facade? What if beneath the surface of everyday life, there are scars left by events we dare not speak of, and shadows that follow our every move? Get ready to question everything. We're about to pull back the curtain and expose the hidden truths that lie just beyond our sight in the world of scars and shadows. What is lurking in your blind spot? Subscribe now and let's find out together. You won't want to miss what's coming next.